have to make a confession. Sometimes I argue with God. Now you notice that I don't say, I argue with the Tao, or I argue with the Dharma, or the will of God, or the purpose of life. Because these are only names for the law which governs life. And you can't argue with a law. It's an abstraction. You know, the stories that are told very often come the night before, or that morning, or sometimes even at the very last moment. But last night I was sitting in my chair and the story came, and I said, "No, God, I've told that story before, and besides that it doesn't seem to have anything to do with the topic that's been discussed of late." And I've done it before, about other things too. But I have to tell you a secret. God always wins. So this story that's been told before, whatever it is, for whatever reason, for whatever its contents are, it's to be told. This story that begins with an old fisherman who's out in his boat fishing, and in the heat of the day he comes into a little cove to rest. But as he looks up at the craggy rocks above, he notices a cascade of auburn hair hanging from a rock. And then when he peers closely, he can see a human form. So he climbed up the crags, and there, lying on a ledge, was a maiden, her body all askew, as though her bones were broken, pale, alabaster almost of countenance. He very gently lifted what he thought was her broken body and carefully carried it back to his little boat, and then he rowed his boat back to his house and carried the young maiden indoors and said to his wife, "I don't know what we're going to be able to do. She's barely alive." But after the wife had ministered to her, she came out and said to the husband, "No, none of her bones are broken. She's just in a state of shock and badly bruised. We'll take care of her. She'll be fine." Well, in the middle of the night, the fisherman's wife was woken by the great sound of crying. So she rushed into the room where the maiden had been lying, and she was sitting up in bed, crying, saying, "Where is my baby? Where is my small man, my small boy?" The fisherman's wife tried to placate her. "You're very sick, you've had a very bad fall. You must be quiet and peaceful so that you can heal." "No, I've got to find my child." Finally, fisherman's wife went into her husband and brought him out, and they tried to convince her, "You must rest, you must take care." And then the maiden told them that she had wrapped her little boy very carefully in swaddling and nestled him in between rocks while she went off to get water. She said, "I've got to find him. I've lost so many. I cannot lose my baby." So, with all the resistance of the fisherman and his wife, the young girl got up and set off to find her child. She stumbled along. She was still badly bruised and battered from her fall, but she went off into the deep forest And when she came to a village the next day, she asked everyone in the village, "Have you seen my baby?" But no one had seen her child. Finally, exhausted, she sat one evening under a tree, and not far away from where she was sitting, a group of gypsies had made their camp, and several of the little gypsy children who were playing nearby saw her and saw her bedraggled state, and they went off to tell their parents, and the parents came, and seeing the state of this poor girl, they carried her over to their caravans, and they gave her a bowl of stew, and they listened to her as she begged them, "Please, will you help me? I have to find my baby boy." "Well," the gypsies said, "we cannot help you because we're moving our camp this very night, but the camp to which we're heading has an old woman who may be able to help you." So the young girl went along with the gypsies, and when they arrived at the camp, she was immediately taken to an old woman with white hair, sitting by a fire that had already been established. And the old woman looked at her and said, "What is it, my child? Sit, tell me your story." So the young girl sat down and poured her heart out to the old gypsy woman, telling how she'd been orphaned at an early age, and at 16 she'd met and married a handsome farmer, and 2 years later they were joyful, overjoyed at finding they were going to have a child. But 2 weeks before the child was born, her husband died of a fever. So when her child was born, she was left all alone. She begged the old lady, "Please, please help me find my baby boy." The old woman threw some herbs onto the fire and went into what you could say was somewhat of a trance. And when she came out of her trance, she said to the girl, shaking her head, "I cannot help you. Your child has been taken by the fairies of the night, taken to their realms, deep in a mountain side." The girl began to cry and weep, "Please, please, you must help me find my child. I've lost so many. I cannot lose my baby." The old woman sighed and said, "We gypsies know the way of nature, but we do not know the way of the occult realms. But I'll see what I can do. You rest now." The old woman sat by the fire all through the night, throwing herbs now and again,